Hello, friends and family, strangers and acquaintances, my future children, and my future self. It's been a while, I know. You've got questions, I've got some answers, but I've also got my own questions for myself, which we'll get into throughout the duration of this. So first things first. Where's Lex? She's sleeping. I'm recording this at like 2 a.m. So this is going to be a more intimate solo entry. But fear not, because if you haven't heard, her and I have started another podcast. It's called Nuanced AF. And it's available on YouTube as a video podcast. So you can see our beautiful faces there and get your fill of Lex and Juan content. Just search Nuanced AF anywhere and everywhere you get your podcasts. Second, does this mean Juandering is ending? Not necessarily. I think it might transform into more of an annual check-in. Oh, by the way, I am 31 today. Woohoo! I started this podcast on my 27th birthday, and I kind of like the idea of doing at least one entry on or around my birthday. The other thing I can see us doing is if we have another guest on, and it's just not something that we can fit into the Nuanced AF podcast, we may host it here. It's a bit more structured over there, whereas here, I mean, you've seen the 3+ hour episodes. So no, Juandering isn't ending. It's just changing. And it'll always be here to look back on. But moving forward, I wanted to give an update on me and how I've been doing. I always intended this to be a form of a personal public diary. And I've always appreciated and wanted to be like creators who are willing to be open and vulnerable with their emotions online. So, in the words of the great poet Swift, this is me trying. I'm not the best I've been. 2026 has proven to be a significantly, noticeably harder year for me, with the central theme being summed up into one word: loss. Starting with something perhaps on the sillier side, but still impactful to me: Stranger Things, and the ending of that series. I know the internet seems divided on its ending, but I loved it, and thought it really hit that bittersweet tone of that loss of childhood innocence that comes with coming-of-age stories. That realization that growing up also means moving on, and not necessarily together. I was able to watch it in theaters right when it released on New Year's Eve with Lex and my core group of guy friends. And as cool as that was, it made me reflect on those said friends and how we're all growing up and moving on. As you may or may not remember, I love playing volleyball. And I've come to realize that my love for playing volleyball is intertwined, correlated, and almost codependent on my love for playing with my friends as a team. I love playing volleyball because I get to play it with my friends. So when one of those friends decided to pursue playing without us, it really put me in a state of shock and uncertainty. My relationship with volleyball was defined by the bonds of our friendship and growing/strengthening with them. So the thought of playing without one of them was akin to the thought of playing without one of my limbs. I wasn't sure if I wanted to return. I ultimately decided to play another season. And it was weird at first, but still fun, which is what mattered to me most. Was I still having fun? Eventually, I saw the other friend on the other side of the net, and while I tried not to think about that too much and just focus on myself, I didn't really like or was proud of the person I became during those games. This pattern continued on and off up through playoffs where we were eliminated without securing a single win. And while winning isn't everything to me, not having that core team of my friends intact anymore just made things that much more defeating. Which brings the question back up. Am I still having fun? I don't know. I lean towards maybe not. Definitely not as much as I used to. The future is uncertain for me. But even outside the game, I feel a shift in dynamics with us. It might be us as a group, or just me, as I'm the furthest removed from the equation, both dynamically and quite literally, like physically. I live about an hour away from all of them. But when we're all together, I think we all try to act like things are fine and normal. But it hasn't ever felt the same for me. We used to meet up at one household and take turns carpooling the volleyball. But I basically spent this past whole season driving myself an hour down and an hour back up. Which leads to my next point of loss, my car. It's still weird to say I used to drive a Mazda SUV. Emma, if you will. She was a beauty and a beast. But after 8 years and 240,000 miles, she needed more love than I could give her. I was already gearing up to let her go by the end of this year, but a seized caliper and major suspension work needing to be done, things escalated very quickly. Quicker than I would have liked or was ready for. I loved Emma. She was the first car I picked out for myself. She gave both Lex and me so many great adventures. She provided me with a livelihood. And I loved driving my friends in her. But my time with her is up. And while some people may find it silly to be so sentimental towards a car, this is just truly, genuinely, unapologetically how I feel for what was essentially a second home for me. Another safe space. A trusty steed providing inanimate companionship. And obviously, not trying to take away from Emma, but an even deeper gut punch that was an animate, living, breathing companion. Julius, my dog, of 15 years. This one hurts. Very much still a fresh, open wound. As of 6:30 p.m. on April 7, 2026, Julius crossed over the Rainbow Bridge, surrounded by his entire family and held by my sister and me. I have this feeling of like I've now joined a club that I knew I eventually would, but never wanted to. The club of people who have lost a pet. I know in both my head and in my heart that it is better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. But now that the time for loss has come, I'm absolutely being tested. I know it's only been a few days, but this is really one of the only truest forms of loss that I have to grieve. At a moment's notice, I can break down into tears when I was otherwise completely fine. I feel almost bipolar with the whiplash of emotions. I think I'm just going to plagiarize myself and recite what I wrote in my social media post. I remember being a kid and deciding between asking for either a dog for Christmas or Xbox Live. Spoiler, I got neither. And then I had struck a deal with my parents that if I'd made the honor roll, then my reward would be getting a dog. And while I made good on my end of the deal way before they did theirs, eventually, Julius came into our lives. And he is the goodest of good boys ever. Now don't get me wrong, would he bark at you until he met you while simultaneously running away from you, trying to give him the very thing he wanted? Yes, 100% without fail. But despite the many objections from my mom, I don't regret a single treat I gave him, extra or otherwise. All the treats for just being a good boy. All the treats I'd leave as a parting gift every time I had to leave my parents' house. Right down to the last treat I was able to give him. A milk chocolate peanut butter cup, so he would at least have the chance to try chocolate once in his life. Julius, I hope you know how much I love you and how loved you are by all of us. You will always be in our hearts as the fifth J in this family of J's. Friends, if you've got a fur baby, give them an extra hug and an extra treat for me, for Julius. This has truly made me think about spirituality and what I believe in as far as life after death and existential meanings. I found a lot of comfort in animal communicators and all their experiences. But I also try to keep a healthy bit of skepticism to know that this might all just be a bunch of copium. Still, it brings me comfort in an otherwise grueling grieving process. I'm obviously still in the very early stages and will probably want to say more. But for right now, this might be my capacity. So, there's no good transition out of that. But I will say, when life reminds you of its finiteness, you can't help but start to ask yourself rather existential questions. which I was already doing before all of this. In my creative endeavors, for the better part of the past 4 years, I have been making great strides in an industry that seemed like a dream to me as a kid. Esports. Specifically, Halo esports. I loved watching MLG, Major League Gaming events, as a teen, when Halo was front and center. And into adulthood, I've been lucky enough to not only go to events and meet a lot of my heroes, but also work with them and make a name for myself. But as anyone who works in esports will tell you, it's an extremely fickle industry. And with Halo not being the juggernaut it once was, we're often stuck in limbo in between games and competitive seasons. The Halo Championship Series announced that 2025 would be the last competitive year for Halo Infinite until the next competitive title. And while there are still a handful of grassroots events being held in 2026, it's just not the same as a proper HCS season. And because of that, I'm not able to do as much or be as involved. One of the biggest things for me is the work that I do for the podcast HCS Pro Talk. Let me be very clear. Working with Josh and Will and HCS Pro Talk might be the single greatest thing to come out of me being involved in Halo esports. I found a community of genuinely good-hearted people who make me feel respected, validated, and even loved. But because of the off-season, understandably, my work with them has been suspended indefinitely. Not necessarily a door closed forever, I hope, but for now. And as understandable as that is, it still feels like just another loss in the year of 2026. And while my work with them has been nothing but rewarding, there were opportunities to work with others that unexpectedly served as a reality check for me. I've learned that what I used to put under the umbrella of imposter syndrome is more specifically RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which makes sense with all the other related terms I associate with myself: people pleasing, perfectionism, ADHD, etc. I realized this when I would get crippling anxiety if I felt like too much was asked of me too frequently. The people pleasing would kick in as I wanted to prove my worthiness, often in a self-sacrificial manner. But then in direct opposition was the RSD, just wishing nothing was asked of me so that I had no chance to disappoint or be rejected by anyone. Not to mention any financial obligations or monetary compensations where I had to advocate for myself. It's just an interesting cocktail of mental issues, that's for sure. But it puts me in this weird space where I'm now questioning what it is that I really want. I've never really had a problem knowing what I want to do in life. Sure, maybe it's changed or varied slightly to keep up with the times over the years, but I've always had a general direction of wanting to work in the entertainment industry, wanting to be creative, make art, etc. But when given the opportunity to do something pretty damn close to what I want to do, I froze. I crumbled under the pressure that was either barely applied yet or preemptively perceived. my fear of rejection became greater than my passion for creating. Hence the title of this entry. All in? Question mark? I don't know. It seems like I want something impossible. To be able to create what I want, when I want, with no other outside sources imposing creative control, and support myself that way. I mean, I know it's possible, but I used to fully believe it was possible and maybe even destined for me. I had to, because otherwise no one would. And after many years of varying success, but ultimately nothing solidly concrete, doubt has started to creep in. Doubt that I may be afraid of hard work at the first sign of potentially disappointing others. I can work hard for myself and disappoint myself, but when someone else expects something from me, it can be soul-crushing, devastating. Doubt that I might be one of those people who don't want to work in what they love because then it turns into something else and takes the joy out of it, which sounds absolutely contradictory to the person that I have been fighting to be all my life. Doubt that I no longer have a clear direction and that I'm lost. Hopefully this isn't a midlife crisis at 31, because I'd really like to live past 62. But yeah, all in one is a little all unsure right now. And I'm trying my best to be okay with that. To be okay with not being okay. Like many, I have a hard time admitting if/when I'm not okay. But it's not for the reason you're thinking of. It's not out of some fragile masculine ego, or at least I hope not. It stems from always feeling like I was the problem as a child and a project that needed to be worked on. So I try desperately to not be seen as someone who has a problem. I do not like to inconvenience others. I will absolutely go out of my way to stay out of someone else's way. You can see this in me whether I'm in a grocery store or on the road, or even just the way I talk. What words I choose, when I choose to say them, and inadvertently what words I don't choose, and when I don't choose to talk. I try to be a safe space for others by not taking up more space than I need to, both physically and metaphorically. And I know that this often means shrinking myself, which goes back to what I said about being okay with disappointing myself but not disappointing others. I guess I realize that I often am in my own way, and I do not know how to, or might not even want to, get out of my own way. I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm okay. But I think that that's okay. So, I guess I'll just keep wandering, and go all in. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me.